הניסים ועל הברכן ועל הגבורות ועל התשועות ועל הנפלאות, על הניסים ועל הברכן ועל הגבורות ועל התשועות ועל הנפלאות שעשית לאבותינו בימים ההם בזמן הזה, בזמן הזה שעשית לאבותינו בימים ההם בזמן הזה.
Welcome to Jewish Life, a program presented in cooperation with the Jewish Community Relations Council of New York. I'm your host, Stewart Ain. Every week we present programs of particular interest to the Jewish community, and today we'd like to welcome back to our program Rabbi David Nesenoff. He was on the program, 20 years ago? It was a while ago.
Give or take 10 years. Give or take 10
years. 42 years, so it's a long time. So welcome back. How are you? And
fantastic.
Good. And you have a new book out, and the new book is called "I Never Met the Rebbe Many Times," and it's quite a fast read, and I like to read. Rabbi Joseph Tuluskin wrote humorous and poignant, and it's got punchlines after every chapter as you get into at the end of every chapter. So it's really good. And now you were started as a conservative rabbi, and now you're a Chabad rabbi. There are 3,000 Chabad centers in 75 countries, and you visited something like 300 Chabad houses.
Actually, close to 800.
800 now. Wow. So talk about that. Talk about the book. It's quite a transformation. To go from a conservative rabbi to a Chabad rabbi, is it not, or maybe not?
It depends where you start the story. Okay.
Yes.
I didn't start at before I was at JTS. I was at YU, but I'll go even back. I'm a son of Abraham, Isaac, and Jacob. I'm a Levite from Moshe Rabbeinu. My great grandparents were Ger Hasidim in Poland. Okay, and a couple of generations of conservative YU, etc. And then I got involved with Chabad. People always say, how'd you get involved with Chabad? A Chabad rabbi came over to me and said, do you like cake? And I said, I like cake. And then I went to 800 Chabad houses and had a lot of cake. But I think, look, there is a secret to Chabad. Everybody's always trying to figure out what the secret is. And in one of my chapters, it's called Revealed in Tufts, and it tells the secret of Chabad. If you want, I'll tell you briefly what that secret is.
Please, putting on tefillin.
Might as well. What's that?
Putting on tefillin.
Well, putting on tefillin is the secret of the Torah, but Chabad, what is Chabad's secret?
Okay.
I was up at Tufts University, and I've spoken at many places. I spoke in Buenos Aires to 4,000 people. Tufts University was one of the smaller ones. So it's around a Shabbos table, at the university. And then Shabbos lunch, I spoke again a little. And then they said to me, the rabbis there, the rabbi and his wife said, you don't want to take a Shabbos shluff. You're finished with your obligations of speaking, go to sleep. So I said, no, let me take your kids for a little walk. I took 4 of the kids for a walk on campus, which left only like a dozen kids left in their house at home. It was like a second honeymoon for the rabbis. So I took the kids with me. 2 of the boys ran ahead and the 2 little girls walked next to me. And I looked out, we saw the Student Life Center. We looked in and we saw some of the Jewish kids on Shabbos on their computer doing work. And, it's a tough school, Tufts, and they're doing work. And I, we waved, whatever, we could walk ahead. And then all of a sudden, the little girl gives a tug on my jacket. I looked down and she was concerned that I wouldn't understand why there were Jewish people working on Shabbos. She was worried about me. So she looks up at me and she says, they don't know about Shabbos and Muktzah and the laws yet, but don't worry. They'll learn. And that was when I met the Rebbe. That's the secret of Chabad. It is really totally non-judgment. I know people always say we're not judgment, but people are always judging. But the Rebbe really was not judgmental. And there were people during the 60s and 70s that came in front of him, all different shapes, sizes, hair, beads, whatever. And he really looked only at the Jewish neshama, the Jewish soul. And there's something very satisfying about that. And that's what attracted me. That's what attracts other people. Now, people can still be members of their synagogues and all their conservative form, whatever. But when they come to Chabad, they really do feel that feeling of the Rebbe, that there's no judgment whatsoever. The Rebbe never liked the word mekarev, to bring Jews closer to Judaism, because he believed we're already close. We have all of Judaism, all of Torah is inside of us. And yeah, you put some tefillin on somebody, have them light candles, and that Judaism comes out. And that's the secret of Chabad.
Right. Well, in your book, you talk about, I guess these are stories that you would tell during your talks. And when you go around and you speak it, you've been invited to, as you said, 800 Chabad houses all around the world. And, and you're bringing a message to these, to the members of the Chabad houses. I guess, is the message basically the same to everyone? Or, well, first of all, you say you never met the Rebbe. You did see the Rebbe, though. You did see him, but you didn't meet him. Nobody
I really didn't meet him. When I was at USY as a teenager, we went there. I didn't really know where I was. But I mean, I can start by saying I never met the Rebbe many times. Like, what does that mean? I never met him many times. It's kind of interesting title. With a title like that, the pages could be empty, people would buy. But I never met the Rebbe many times. My first day at Yeshiva University, I studied the first page of Gemara I ever saw in my life. And it was Masechet, the tractate of Kiddushin, about marriage. And it said in the second chapter, it said, Ha'ish mekadesh bo v'shlucho. A man can marry by showing up himself, or by a representative, an agent showing up for him, a shliach. And my mind was like, what do you mean? If I don't show up to my wedding, I can have my buddy show up? This is the Talmud? This is what I waited my whole life to learn? But it explains that shliach, the word there, shliach, a representative, is not just a buddy. It's not just someone who's repping you. It really is someone who is the essence of who you are, to the standard of who you are. It's the atzmos, your very essence. And so when the person is a shliach of the Rebbe, when the person is the representative of the Rebbe out there, we're actually getting to meet the Rebbe. You're actually getting to get as close as you can get. So when I say I never met the Rebbe many times, I met the shluchim, the representatives, the rabbis of the Rebbe. And by meeting them, I really have met the Rebbe. And to answer your other question as far as what my topics are, first, the topics were about anti-Semitism, because I was the guy that outed Helen Thomas at the White House, and when she said the Jews should go back to Germany. And so that became a Rebbe story. It became a story that people wanted to hear, because it was how you fight anti-Semitism.
Just explain that. You were talking to her. You had a tape recorder with you, right?
I actually had the flip camera. They used to, before they had the iPhones and stuff, they had a little flip camera. Sure. And I put it in front of her, and I said, any comments on Israel? And she said, tell him to get the hell out of Palestine. And I said, ooh. And then I said, where should they go? She said, home. And then because I asked the next question, things changed for her and me. I said, where's home? And she said, Germany and Poland. Yes, time out. She said, Germany and Poland. Of course, Obama threw her out of the White House. Everybody, she became cast aside.
She was a UPI correspondent she was the dean of the White House press corps.
Yeah. And by the way, that was probably the moment where, we used to be able to say, hey, I don't like Israel, but I'm not anti-Jewish, But when you say go back to Germany, you're not saying go back to Tel Aviv or Netanya or Herzliya. When you say back to Germany, you are showing that I'm not only anti-Israel, I'm anti-Jewish. Go back to Germany. Today, we have that very clear, where the people who are saying anti-Israel and anti-Zionism are saying the most disgusting things, so it's clear that they're anti-Jewish as well. But I think the moment with Helen Thomas was kind of a watershed moment where we finally saw that you can't say one without the other. That if you're anti-Israel, you know what, maybe you have some anti-Jewish feelings.
And she lost her job because of that. And
she lost her job. She was thrown out. They stripped her of all her accolades and everything else. And it kind of pushed me into discussing anti-Semitism. And that was originally what my speeches were about, how to fight anti-Jewish. And I usually explain fight anti-Jewish by doing Jewish. Okay. And that was my mantra. However, because I got involved and were able to see all these from between South America, I was in Curitiba, Rio, Sao Paulo. I was in Uruguay, Paraguay, Argentina, Australia, throughout Europe, throughout the United States, Australia, everywhere. And Israel, I was able to get a flavor more of a Hasidism and Lubavitch. And then my speeches became a little more about the Rebbe and the Hasidim and what they bring to the world. So it kind of transformed into that. Of course, today, we're back to discussing anti-Semitism again, and it's an important topic. And a lot of it is about joy and happiness. My book is really about about happiness. Okay, the Rebbe said the biggest challenge, okay, for all of us isn't all the things you think are challenging. The biggest challenge is how to do everything b'simcha, how to do everything with happiness. Before we wake up in the morning, before we brush our teeth, okay, we're already kvetching about 20 things. The Jews are very good with Tisha B'Av and Yom Kippur. We're very good. When it comes to Simchas Torah and Sukkot, when we're supposed to be happy for 8 days, like Gewalt, how am I going to be happy for 8 days? So one of my topics is joy is a serious business. How can we be happy even with what's going on? How do we be happy after October 7th? How do we be happy? And that's a topic that people are clinging to.
A lot of mysticism in the book. Talk about spiritual, and you talk about spiritual and physical, and a number of stories are like that. Can you talk about that?
Yeah, I gave an example. This is one I came up with. It wasn't. Sometimes I come up with things on my own. I said that there was a reality show called Abigail and Brittany, and these were conjoined twins. And I first thought, oh, I'm not going to watch this, But then I watched it and I was like, why is it attracted to me so much? Because they were so happy. They were conjoined. One had the leg and the arm here, one had the leg and arm here. I mean, what a life. And they rode bicycles, they drove cars, they played guitar, they went bowling, all these different things. And they were very different people, Abigail and Brittany. They still are. They're very different people. So how did they survive like that? Because they looked after the other one. If this one wanted to, play guitar, she learned it. This one wanted to read. If this one wanted to go to movies, this one, even though it wasn't their thing, they looked after it so the other part of them would be happy. Why do I bring that up, and why did I use that as a mashal, as an example? Because we have inside of us, we have a godly soul and an animal soul. We got the spiritual and the material, and we have to look after our conjoined twins inside of us. If I'm lying in bed, I don't want to get up for shul, I'm tired, So you got to do it for your godly soul. Your godly soul goes skiing with you. You should go to shul for the godly soul. So if we don't look after our conjoined twins, so to speak, we will walk around miserable. And we see people in the world, they're miserable. And those two girls, Abigail and Brittany, would have been miserable. But if we look after each other's, the part of our soul, the godly soul and the animal soul, the material and the spiritual, then we can really have some joy and happiness. And that's really what we say about the spiritual and the material. And that's in the book. I give that example as well.
Right, but they're also out of this world things that you say, oh, this, and then you say, whoa, wait a second. And you do that with a number of stories. Can you want to tell one or two?
Yeah, as far as, really, really mystical.
Yeah. Ooh.
Well, there's so many stories. There's so many stories about the Rebbe dollar. The Rebbe gave out dollars. Okay. Right. So interesting thing is someone gives out dollars. I once heard that capitalism isn't taking in money, it's giving away money. Also, if you're going to want people to give tzedakah, give them $1. Then they'll give tzedakah. Maybe they'll give $2 tzedakah. But it was the material. The material is what takes us to the spiritual. I can't just be spiritual. I can't just be here and say, I'm bowling. I have to get the bowling ball and the silly shoes. I have to do the physical to get to the spiritual. Same thing in Judaism to get to the spiritual. So there's stories about the Rebbe dollar. Someone goes to the Rebbe and asks for a dollar for something specific, and the Rebbe gives him $1 and says, when you go back to Jerusalem, give the $1 for tzedakah in Jerusalem. And the guy says, thank you. And he takes a walk, step. And he realizes, oh my goodness, the Rebbe heard my accent. The Rebbe heard that I have an accent. And he thought I lived in Jerusalem, but I'm from France. So he says to Rabbi Groner, the secretary of the Rebbe, he says, oh, the Rebbe told me to go back to Jerusalem, but I have an accent. He thought I'm from Jerusalem, but I'm from France. And the Rabbi Groner, of course, said, what did the Rebbe tell you to do? He said, he told me to go to Jerusalem. I would do that. He doesn't know what. He goes back to France, and he's holding his dollar because he wants the bracha, the blessing from there. Finally, he hops on a plane. He gets to Ben Gurion, gets a sherut, a cab, take me to Jerusalem. Gets in the car, holding, and another guy, the cab driver says, can we have another guy join us? They share. Yeah, go ahead. Another guy gets in the cab and he says, what are you doing here? What are you doing in Jerusalem, going to Jerusalem? And that guy takes out $1 from his pocket and says, the Rebbe gave me $1 to find a bride for my son. And at this point, our friend takes out his $1 and says, the Rebbe gave me $1 to find a groom for my daughter. They called up Rabbi Groner, the shidduch was made, and they're married. These are unbelievable stories, but Rabbi Groner, I don't hear, sometimes these stories are like told from here. I only wrote stories that I heard from the horse's mouth. Rabbi Groner himself told this story, the secretary of the Rebbe, serious man. He told this story. One other one, since you like love stories,
Yeah,
I see.
yeah, you have several of them there.
Yeah, there's
Really
one of the
good.
love stories. I always joke about it. I say there's a Chabad boy. He was getting old. He wasn't married yet. You know, he was like 20. No, I'm joking. He was a little older. So he was getting, and he was very nervous. He wasn't going to get married. So he went to the Rebbe, you know, and the Rebbe gave him $1 and gave him a bracha. And the Rebbe was always very, I'll say stingy, but, you know, he was very direct with his words. So he said, Bikarov. Bikarov means soon, nearby. It's soon, Bikarov. So he said, the Rebbe said, Bikarov, I'm going to get married, Bikarov, soon, nearby. He goes home, he's all excited. The Rebbe said, Bikarov, it's nearby, it's nearby. Years go by again. Still he didn't get married. Couldn't understand it. Finally, he did get married. And he had children, thank God, Baruch Hashem, and he had a lot of children. It was very nice. And then the videos came out years later of you can see your moment with the Rebbe. It's pretty cool. You know, you see yourself as a young person. There's the Rebbe giving it. So he didn't know how to use a computer because anybody over 15 doesn't know how to use this stuff. So he said he got his children around and they got on the computer and they put it up there and they found it, that moment with the date, and there's the Rebbe giving him the $1 and saying, Bikarov, nearby. And he's like, wow. And his wife's sitting there watching, goes, I'm the next one online. The Rebbe said, Bikarov, nearby. It was nearby. So you can make this stuff up. It's a great story.
I know, it's really good.
But again, these are, you know,
these are punchlines.
Yeah. By the way, the other thing that's so true to the Rebbe is the famous stuck story, which I have. There was a women's convention, a Chabad convention in Detroit, and the women went there. And then there was right before Passover, whatever, and there was a big snowstorm. So they're at the airport. They can't leave. They can't get a plane. They call up the Rebbe's office and they tell the Rebbe's secretary, we're stuck in Detroit. We're stuck. It's Passover coming. We're stuck. So the secretary says, hold on, gets back on the phone. And they say, the Rebbe said he doesn't understand the word stuck. So the woman starts to explain, well, it means when you can't go somewhere because there's a plane stopped and she says, excuse me. The Rebbe speaks about 7 or 8 languages. He knows what the word stuck means. What the Rebbe said is a Jew is never stuck. Where you are is where you're supposed to be. And that is a key to satisfaction and happiness in life as well. Okay, wherever we are, people say you have to be in the moment. You have to be in the now. Some of the writers write that we have to. And of course, he told them, you're at the airport. You're there for a reason. They started handing out Shabbos candles and matzahs and whatever they did at the airport. They weren't stuck. But and I quote also the famous speaker, one of the great speakers. I mean, I enjoy speaking, but the Y.Y. Jacobson, if you ever have an opportunity, Y.Y. Jacobson is brilliant. And he explains it as you're either, when it talks about the Joseph story, when Joseph said to his brothers, it's me, and they all got nervous. Oh my goodness, you know, we threw him in a pit.
Retribution, yes.
So, and he said, no, I wasn't sold. He said, I was sent. Okay.
Yes.
And that goes for our life. Were we sold or were we sent? Okay, you sell a house. You don't go to the house and ask, do you want to be sold? You know, a sold is you have no control over your life. Okay, sent means I was put here for a reason. Even with the service and whatever problem I'm going through, was I sold or am I in this position? And in the book, I do give an example. I won't go into detail, but the Lazarovs in Houston who lost a child. Okay, and from that experience, they learned about what goes on in hospitals and people from out of town, and they have no place to stay, and it's a whole, you know, for many months. So they built, from that experience, they built Eshel House, the premier building of apartments, has a mikveh, has a shul, has it for everybody to come to when you're from out of town and have to stay at a hospital. They provide for them, they give them food, and so here they weren't stuck either. They've experienced the worst thing you could experience of losing a child, and they took it and made it into something that other people, you know, will experience some maybe joy or something, some help when they're going through an experience.
So tell me about the fact that you're starting all over again, going to different Chabad houses to talk to them. How did that come about?
Do you mean the first time or the second time?
Well, say the first time. How did that come about?
Well, what happened was after the thing happened with Helen Thomas, I received an award from the Jewish Learning Institute, the retreat, and people heard me speak, and they wanted to hear more about. It was a story about the Rebbe actually, because you know, when we talked about Helen Thomas, how did the Rebbe get involved in that story? Because Ari Fleischer called me up when it happened, the former press secretary, and he said, you know, you need a message. You're going to be on television. I'm just telling you as a professional, make sure you have a message. If you don't have a message, they're going to make up a message. So I said, okay, I'll have a message. So then my son came home and I said, first of all, I said to my son, Ari Fleischer called, Adam. And I said to Adam, and Adam's, he's the one that does all this. He's behind the scenes guy. So he said to me, yeah, I told Ari Fleischer to call you. So I said, okay, well, Adam somehow got out. So I said, Adam, he said, we need a message. So Adam said, we need to find someone smarter than us. You go for help and advice of what message we should give to the television after this anti-Semitism thing. So he said to me, who do you want to speak to? You're in the front page of the paper today, your front news. Name the name, and I bet you can get them on the phone. So I thought about it. Who do I want to get advice from? It's about the Holocaust. It's about Washington. I said, Elie Wiesel. I want to talk to Elie Wiesel. So Adam says, you want to talk to Elie Wiesel? I said, yeah. He left the room. I literally was seconds. He walks back in. Here's Elie Wiesel on the phone. I get on the phone. Yasher Koch, Rabbi Nesenoff was very nice. He told me there's evil in the world. He was very nice speaking to him. But I asked him what my message was. And surprisingly, Elie Wiesel said, I read about you in the paper this morning, about, you pray with Chabad. First of all, my mind is blown that Elie Wiesel is sitting over like a prune Danish and a sank of coffee reading about me in the paper. So, but that's the way it was then. So he said to me, I read that you were involved with Chabad now. He said, why don't you find out what the Lubavitcher Rebbe would have wanted you to say on television? So I show up at Stony Brook, Long Island, right? At Rabbi Chaim Grossbaum's shul in the morning for Minyan.
Yes.
And now I had an entourage. My life changed. I had a guy carrying my talis bag, my tefillin bag. They were wrapping me. Oh, very shishi. So I said to Rabbi Grossbaum, I said, hey, Ari Fleischer said I need a message, and Elie Wiesel said I need, I should find out what the Lubavitcher Rebbe wants me to say on television. So another great thing about Chabad, a lot of people would go, oh, that's nice. Rabbi Chaim Grossbaum, the shliach of the Rebbe, representative of the Rebbe, he said, let's find out. He gets on the phone, Rabbi Avram Shem Tov, leading Chabad rabbi in the Washington area, been to the White House many times. He's anyway, he got on the phone. He knew who I was because I was in the paper, I was in the news that day. And he gave me the message. And it's a very short message. I'll give it to you right now so your listeners can hear it as well. He said, if you have a friend and your friend goes away for a year, is that still your friend? Sure. 4 years, you don't see your friend. Still your friend? Okay. After 50 years, you don't see that friend. And forget about Facebook friends. I'm talking real friends. You don't see your friend for 50 years. Maybe it's not my friend. It's somebody I used to know. Okay. He said, but if you have a child, and your child goes away for years, it's still your child. Of course it is. Your child goes away for 4 years to college. Is it still? Of course it's still. If God forbid, I don't want to think of this circumstance, we'll say, chas v'shalom chalila v'chas, God forbid, a person doesn't see their child for 50 years. Is that still your child? Of course that's still my child. And the Rebbe said, we are not the friends of Israel. We are B'nai Yisrael. We are the children of Israel. And children are forever. Our relationship with God, our relationship with Israel, and our relationship with the Jewish people is forever because we are children. And that's the message that maybe Helen Thomas didn't understand. And that's the message that Hamas doesn't understand. And that's the message that some people in Washington don't always understand. But we are the children of Israel. And it's a forever relationship. And that's our obligation as children to continue giving it to our children and our grandchildren.
So going back to one of my questions was, how did you get started going around and talking?
Oh yeah, so yeah, we'll get to, you know what they say about rabbis. Before I say a few words, I want to speak, so before I speak, I want to say a few words. So what happened was I gave that message at the time, and people found that of interest, so I started speaking places. And then, it developed more into speech about Judaism, inspiring people to take on more Judaism, whatever that level is, take on a little more. And now that the book, and I stopped for a little while, and then the book came out, everybody started reading it. It became a bestseller, and so people started asking me again to speak, talk about the book. Certainly after October 7th, they want to hear about how do we win? How do we be happy? How can we deal with October 7th and still function in the world? And that's my big message now, as far as how do we do that? Us sitting here in Dix Hills and Long Island and Florida and Europe, any place, certainly we could put on olive green and go to Israel if we're young enough and strong enough. But what about the rest of us? How do we fight? And that's one of my messages. I could tell you how we do it. if you want to know the answer.
Please, yes, yes.
So it's a little story. If we have a moment, I'll tell the little story.
Sure, we have about
I
4
left
minutes.
Sure, when I left Long Island very quickly, we were moving out of the house, and I'm embarrassed to tell it. We were moving out, and I found a box of books I used to take around for Shiva, the prayer books.
Yes. Oh,
And it was
that's
midnight at night. We were leaving with the truck, and I had to get rid of this box. What do I do with it? I can see you
Right.
read the book. So I told my kids, drop it off at the shul. There's a Reform synagogue down the block. Just leave it at their door. Tomorrow morning they'll take it and be my last gift to to the area. Like people used to always drop off the most decrepit books of me and want the deductible and because the receipts. Anyway, so that's good. Next morning, I go with my daughter to Starbucks because she didn't have school. We're moving, and the nice father-daughter bonding time. Anyway, someone comes up to us who I knew from Chabad. A woman says, "Oh, I hear you're moving." I said, "Yes." She said, "Well, you're getting out just in time." Said, "What do you mean?" It's kind of odd thing to say. She said, "Didn't you hear they found a bomb at the Reform synagogue in front of their door?" It wasn't a bomb. It was the prayer books I left the night before.
Right.
So anyway, I'll make a long story short. They had the police, the firemen, the helicopters. Everybody was there, and they pulled me in. They had a robot going in to pick up I went there finally, and I said, "They're prayer books. They're prayer books," and everybody was relieved. I was embarrassed. They gave me a deduction receipt, whatever.
Yeah.
But I thought I would never tell that story. Certainly not on your show for millions of people to watch. But I tell it because the Lubavitcher Rebbe says the word vayigash, to approach in prayer, is the same word we use to approach in war, in battle. And that I learned that the way we aim our prayers has to also be like one is shooting. Like you can't just say these prayers. Our job, who are not in the IDF, we have to take our prayers seriously. We have to light our candles. We have to put on our tefillin. We have to read those prayers because there's a spiritual war that we have to fight. And it's just as important as the other war. And we should take it very seriously. Our books are indeed explosives. Our prayer books are things that can make a change and that can blow up the enemy. And we should take it seriously. And anyway, that's my message really, is that we have to fight the spiritual war more seriously.
Well, you're known as, according to you in the book, the Maggid of Boca Raton, Florida.
Maggid, yeah. Well, the Maggid of Dubno was one of my favorite books. The Dubno speaker was one of my favorite, and I use that term when there's a chapter in here of when I spent Yom Kippur in prison because I was helping them. I wasn't arrested, I called myself because it took us a while to get in because of all the we couldn't use electronics to get in, so we had to explain to the guards I can't use electronics. It's Yom Kippur. We finally got in. All the prisoners there, and they were like double murderers. They were Jews, but they were pretty serious, and they were upset that they were upset that I came late. So they said, "Did you have trouble getting in?" And I decided to test my humor on them. I said, "Apparently, getting in is not the problem." Getting out. And they paused, and then they laughed. And I said, "Maggid of Boca Raton has arrived."
So we've got about a minute left. Sure. What's your message? Now, you're still going around. You're going to be going around around the world. What in 1 minute, what would you say is the message that you want to convey to everybody, all the groups that you talk to?
Sure. I think it goes back to the concept of what's the most difficult mitzvah. And I spoke about it in the introduction of my book, and I hinted at it earlier, and that is that we are supposed to do things b'simcha, with happiness. It's very hard. We have to be in the moment. And being in the moment is what makes you happy. I was praying at the pulpit in Boca Raton by Rabbi Denberg, a Chabad rabbi, and I was going through the prayer. I'm fast, I'm good. And then it comes to one of the final prayers, and I'm stopped. I'm like stifled, and because it was the prayer of the day, and I forgot what day it was. Right. Rabbi Denberg got up, walked over, and he looked at me and leaned over, and he said, "It's Wednesday." And I said, "Oh, it's Wednesday." I said, I read the prayer for what I'm saying is that sometimes the most important prayer is it's Wednesday. To be in the moment. Don't worry about yesterday. Don't worry about tomorrow. Be and enjoy this moment in our life.
Great. Thanks so much. Again, the name of the book is I Never Met the Rebbe Many Times. Rabbi David Nesenoff. Thanks very much for joining us this hour. Great.
Good to see you. I'll see you in 20 years still. Thanks a lot.
Bye-bye. This has been Jewish Life. I'm Stewart Ain. Until next week, have a good one.